and it's February. Oh grief. It's actually not as cold as it has been. But this isn't very helpful, is it? Horses over there, tucking into some hay. It's not too bad, I suppose. I mean, they did forecast this. It should warm up a bit next week. So what have I been up to? Well, I've been collecting all the bits and bobs together. They're going to the body shop, or are needed to rebuild the doors. Those are all going back with me, so I can work on those early next week. I've singled out, go to the store, I've singled out a pair of door frames, which are going to be powder coated. I've taken the heater unit out of the car because I've been faffing around with the gearbox. I found a front wing that I'm going to use. The only problem with it is that hole at the bottom there, but that's hidden underneath the deck panel. So I'm going to do something creative. It's got the indicator hole, but again, we should be able to do something creative with that. Otherwise, the wing is in good shape, and I'm going to put that on. I did buy a pair of door skins, and these things are magnificent. Where's it gone? There it is. It's hidden in the bottom there. Look. Land Rover, genuine parts. It's a complete brand spanking new door skin. The passenger one is with the body shop chap, and he's fitting that at the moment. This is the driver's side, because I'm making repairs to the driver's door at the moment, which is in the barn. I've got the glass sorted out. I've managed to take all of the frames off. Close that so don't get too much snow in there. Clang. Go back into the workshop. I've managed to separate the glass from the quarter lights. So the glass has come out. The quarter lights in both cases here are serviceable. There's no rust on them. Well, no significant rust. I'm going to get these blasted, powder coated, reinstalled glass. That's those. That's the frames. The things. Oh, rear quarters. These are the corners that go right at the back end of the car. Now, it's quite common for this section here to rot out along with this edge here. So what I did was I drilled the spot welds all the way along here, cut out fresh steel, welded it in, and when they're all painted up, they will go onto the back rings, and they fit in beautifully. And you can see there now, nice clean metal, and that'll be protected and painted when it goes back onto the car. These are going back to Mr. Paint Shop Man. But, on the whole, these things aren't too bad. This one has had a small patch. It's got a dent at the top there which needs to be popped out, but I'll leave that to the body shop chap. This one, on the whole though, is in pretty good shape. The only bit that was rusted was that panel. You can see I spot welded, plug welded it back in. A little bit of seam I did along the edge there where this lip had rotted away slightly, but again I'm happy enough with that for the time being. See what body shop chap says as to whether it needs any more work. The other one, let's get him out of the box. It is bloody cold today. Think about pause. The other one has had a bit more work done. It's had a patch welded in at the top corner there. I don't know why. There's no filler on the other side. I really don't understand why that's been done. Down at the bottom though, there's quite a lot of filler, which I've left on the panel. Again, let Mr. Body Shop decide what he's going to do with that, because there's been quite an extensive repair done on the inside. But now I've replaced this edge. It's something that the Body Shop chappie can do something with, I'm hoping. They can go back in there and in there. So the other thing I've been working on is this door. So I've taken off, and here it is. This is the remains of that end panel, the hinge end panel off the driver's door. So I drilled out what spot welds I could find and managed to get the panel off relatively intact. You can see it's in terrible shape, but the strengthening plate underneath, although it looks pretty rusty, is only really surface rust. I'm pretty happy with this. This here is the repair panel that I've made up. I've not drilled all the hinge holes in it. I've just put one hinge hole as a guide at the top. I put the ribs in. I've bent the profile of the frame back. It's alive. At the top of the door, right, let me pause a sec. Struggling a little with gravity today. Right, so at the top of the door, because you need to start with a good reference point, I've made it so that the return edge in here, can you see it? I hope you can see it, actually goes back and touches the skin beautifully, and I've clamped the skin to it. That little piece there just needs to pull out, and that joint there will work. This all clamps in tight. The only bit where I've potentially got a problem is down here, and what I might do is just cut here and then fold that piece back. Bottom down here is more or less ready to start cleaning back and welding, but what I need to do first of all, of course, is drill the remainder of the holes. I've not marked the inside out. What I generally do with these things, you can't see it from the inside, it's too dark in there, but I've used some kind of matte black paint like I have done up here, sprayed it on, gives me a rough idea of where it should go, and then I can revert back to the template, which is hiding under here. It's a magical template that I drew up. So that's the template for the panel that I removed off, and I was able to get that from this rusty piece of shit. So if I lay that all over there, that's kind of how I got the template out of this thing. So I will hang on to this piece and the template because it has been very, very useful in making up the repair section. I've used a number of tools. I've used my shrinker stretcher because once I put the ribs in first of all, that was easy. So I used a swaging machine. Then I started to hand form the return edge using a dolly, bodywork hammers, big hammers, a vise, any straight edge I could find. Then I had to straighten the panel out because obviously having bent that piece of metal back, the panel itself was bow shaped. So using a shrinker along that return edge pulled the panel back into a flat shape. And that's kind of where I am right now. I've cleaned it all up, rust treated it. There's a couple of areas which are ground out there that need a bit of seam putting into them. It's a common area where these things stress crack. What I've done to try and aid the stress cracking is rather than drilling oblong holes for the bolts to go through, I've driven large round holes. I was thinking of Liberty ships. I'm thinking round holes maybe a little bit more resilient to stripping or whatever, cracking. Then I've drilled in the holes for my plug welds, lots of them as you can see, and I have then drilled also into the steel here, so I know it's clean steel, and then zinc primed it. So this is all kind of ready to start welding on. It's as good as the door's going to get. So I've welded the edge on. I found some really frilly bits along the return edge here. So what I've basically done is welded this in place first of all, and then filleted in little bits of steel along here. Next step for this, body skin fits beautifully by the way. Next step for that is to go off to spray blast. They will blast the shell, epoxy prime it for me. And then you can go to the body shop chap. It's going to need a skim of filler on this edge just to tidy things up. Nothing particularly serious, more along here because that's visible from inside the car, but it's relatively flat. One top tip on these things, by the way, you'll notice if you ever cut one of these apart, when you cut down here, this bottom end goes boing, and when you put a flat edge along here, what actually happens is this edge has come out here somewhere. I mean, it's exaggerated, but it's pivoted out, it's sprung out because this thing's pressed as one big panel. So before I welded that back in place, I did put a flat edge along here and made sure that it all lined up, and that's made the world of difference as far as lining up of the edges is concerned. I did cut that piece out there, as you can see. Once the edges are folded over, you're not going to notice. It'll all be body sealed in anyway. So that's the door done. I'm loitering round the workshop just to make sure all the grinder sparks and welding bits are all done and dusted. This lot, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to keep it, of course, because nothing is ever rubbish. As bad as a door might get, and this is all the strengthening rib from the driver's door that I ended up cutting apart for parts, I can still use that as a pattern. There is the hinge, sorry, the lock end of the door. Again, quite useful for templates, directions and so forth, and odds and sods. So all that's just going to go in a box marked shite door bits that I probably should throw away. My top tip for today being Thursday, I had to think about that for a second. These, most useful tool in the workshop. So when I finished, I use it to sweep all the grinder sparks up that have gone out, etc. And really just get the bench tidy again for the next job. Because a tidy bench means that the next job will be just that little bit more pleasant. Not much more pleasant, but a little bit more pleasant. Right, next up, seats. That up there is going to get taken apart to see what I can salvage from it. One does have to ask the question sometimes, exactly how rusty does something have to be before it is utterly fucked? I'm not entirely sure there's going to be that much I can salvage from this. Someone's cut through there. But the rest of this frame, I'm guessing this is the driver's seat. Yes, it must be, because the seat belt comes from that corner. So it's the driver's seat. I'm guessing that it was on a car stored in the sea. Must have been stored in the sea. I'm going to see what I can get off this. Most of these bolts are going to end up getting cut off, so I can release various brackets and bits and bobs. I'm going to hang on to the seat foams from the seat back because they're not available, so I'll keep those. The seat foam from the seat base is available, but again, I'll keep it as a pattern because although it looks fucked, and it is fucked, it could be used as a pattern. Right, okay, so let me start stripping this fella down and I shall report back on what I've managed to save out of it and what is being weighed in against beer bottles. Oh look, there's a corner piece. That's one of the pieces I'm missing. I'll take that off because that's definitely wanted. I'm going to see if the release lever is in here as well. Yes, looks like one of them is in there, but that's for the handle that goes at the front. There's a handle normally here, and that operates that one. I haven't got, I don't think, the release. I mean, look at the state of that spring. That has just rotted through. I have to be careful. I wonder when I last had a tetanus jab. What's the worst that's going to happen? Right, onwards. Short while later. Okay, so got the webbing off the seat back. Got the seat back foam off intact. Well, there's a big piece missing at the top, but that can soon be fixed. Seat base foam, again, big piece missing, but again, that can be fixed. So I can put an extra foam in. Got the remaining seat runner off intact, and it's not bad. I can work with that. Got all the mechanism and odds and sods. Whether I'll ever need it or not, I don't know. I got a pair of brackets off. These are the buggers that allow the seat to slide forwards. I still need to work on this one a little bit. This clearly came off the outside edge of the driver's seat. It's fucked, but it might come up okay. I'm going to give it a good old blast off in the blaster. Cut that bolt out. Oh, maybe just undo the nut, but the spring is dead on it. I found these two fellas. These come off the bottom end of the seat back, and the main pins go through them. I got a pair of seatbelt bolts. I got one pivot bolt out intact. I'm not sure the head's up to much, but focus. There we are. It's a little bit rusty, but you know, I reckon it'll work. It'll come out. A number of other bolts and odds and sods came out, all of which I'm going to hang on to. Clips, I mean, these are all crap to be quite honest, but I've never seen these little plastic pins before. Never seen those. So that's going to get recycled. A few self-tappers again, they're going to get recycled. There's a bracket that goes at the tail end of the runner and bolts the seat to the floor. So again, got one of those off. That's serviceable. I've got one of the rear corner brackets, so this goes on the outside. The seat belt mount or the seat belt return, sorry, seat belt catch or the seat belt return, the bottom end go through that, and that's on the back of the seat. So that came off intact. I reckon I can make those up. I might have to make them up, but I've got a fair few spares of these now. I got both handles off. One is in better shape than the other. It's fairly typical for this powder coating to lift off. I'm not too worried about that one. And I got the spacer that goes with it. This one, on the other hand, is probably not much good, but I ain't going to chuck it out just yet. I've not tried to bang the bolt out yet. There's a long screw. That's the end of the shaft, the adjusting shaft that goes through the middle of the back of the seat. It was utterly ruined. I cut it because where it came from looked like that, exposed to the elements for a long time. I can't see that anything that's left in there is much good to me. This fella here is a torsion spring that should spring the seat back into position, but it's heavily rusted, so that's no good. I've cut the bar, so that's no good. The rest of the frame really is just a pressing that is not going to be any good. I can't see me ever needing that, but me being me, I'll lob it in the shed, because you never know. Yeah, that might end up being in the crap pile. Probably is. Oh, I don't know. It's cleaning back. The other thing I got was a complete seatbelt, which could be used as a pattern, although, to be honest, I probably have self-retracting seatbelts rather than the fixed seatbelts. But if someone wanted fixed seatbelts, there you go. There's the pattern for them. Right, so now I need to find another pair of these brackets. And I've got another seat in here, which I shall take the seat back off. It looks to be relatively easy to get the seat back off. I'll retrieve the other corner and the other pair of brackets. And look, there's another seat belt there on that one. I shall put all this lot in a big box in the unit marked shitty bits off seats. Just started stripping this second scrap seat down, because I think I'm going to get more bits out of this. The seat back may be savable in this thing. The handles appear to work, at least, which is good news. Mouse test! I did manage to get, though, a good seat back top off it, although it's got some lumps out of it, but hopefully they can recover this foam. But yeah. Right, now let's I'm going to strip this fella down. So the objective here is to get these two off intact, and the two brackets inside here that you can see intact should be fairly straightforward. I think I'm going to leave that seat back as it stands. That's the bolt up there. This is a passenger seat, this one. This is the power steering pump from the Range Rover project. It's an early one. It's an Holborn Eaton 5503, I think it was. 5503 851 824. Came apart all right. Gave it a good old jolly good clean up. A little bit worried about the scoring in here. Then I noticed that the bushes, nice and silver. Oh, nice and copper on the cross side, and exactly the same thing with the top bush, nice and silver. Go all around to the thrust side, nice and copper. The rotor, whatever they want to call that, what do they call that thing in these pumps? 14. Carrier. Call it a carrier. So this carries the pins as it spins around inside the pump, and that's got wear on the surface. The surface that it mates with has got wear on it, and the cam has got wear on the inside of it. It's not horrific, it's probably serviceable. The biggest concern I've got is these bushes, and they seem to be a fairly standard 3/4 inch bush, and I've measured that, and that's 1 thou off 3/4 of an inch. But you can see when it's in there, it's got a fair wiggle. So it's certainly worn. If I put the whole pump together, I slide the whole shaft right the way in. Oops. Go on to the job bit. I don't have to work two-handed anymore. One-handed anymore, I should say. Right, let's move that there, you fucker. You can stay there? Right, okay. So, arse wipe. Right, that was actually located there. So basically what happens with these pumps is, let's put that in there where it goes. Let's put the cam in. I've lost the pin, but that's the least of my fucking problems, to be honest. Put the carrier in, put the rollers in. Bom, bom, bom. And then put the bottom of the pump back on. I don't think that went on properly. Yes, it did. Oh, that one of the cables. And then it spins around. Oh, yeah, sorry, what I forgot to put in there is the little lozenge thing, which is in here somewhere. Anyway, bollocks to that. What I'm going to have to do, I think, is I'm going to take these halves up to my team engineering chappie and see if he can press new bushes in. So I'll take the shaft, 2 halves, and we'll see what happens. If you can't do it, you can't do it. If you can do it, then I might think about trying this pump out with new bushes, and there's a seal bearing that goes on the front, which I've wrapped up. Might not be a complete write-off yet. Otherwise, it's not even an attractive paperweight, is it? Pain in the arse. Fucking going! Get the throttle on it. Yeah, it's got no cooling system on it, but it runs!
This exhaust mat is all loose and coming loose again.
Yeah, don't worry about that. It's not a problem. Let's try that again. That's not going to go anywhere really, that's fine up there. Right, you ready on that again?
No.
No, I'm going to get a decent starter motor. I've got the other starter motor to go on it, but it started.
Yeah.
I said there's a result.
Result.
Uncle Ian says result. Right. Well, that was the target, wasn't it?
Well, get out of the pub now then.
Well, fuck that. That's not a bad idea, that.
Dinner time session. There's still video in there. Send it to Jackie, catch me saying we're off down the pub.
Yeah.